Vel'Rana had not intended to die on a human colony. Her shuttle had taken a direct hit near Kestrel 7's upper atmosphere, its navigation systems fried and escape thrusters failing before impact. She'd ejected, bruised, and burning through the sky, praying the impact site was far from civilization. Not to avoid danger. She could handle danger, but to avoid humans. Now, she regretted the isolation. The cave was shallow, exposed to winds that screamed across the tundra. Kestrel 7's fourth moon had just risen, casting a pale light through the icicle-covered entrance. Her hands trembled violently as she tried, again, to coax heat from the salvaged flare she had taken from the crash site. It flickered for mere seconds before sputtering out. Her breath came in uneven clouds. 3 nights since the crash. 3 nights without food. The cold was not alien to her. Shalari worlds had their own winters. But this planet had no mercy. Her species' thermal tolerance had limits. She had passed them yesterday. Her survival instinct screamed louder than her dignity. Her fingers, numb and cracked, reached for the last item in her satchel, her officer's cloak, white with Dominion sigils embroidered in blue thread. A cloak given to her for exemplary service as a field medic. She stared at it. Fire or pride? Warmth or memory? Vel'Rana cursed under her breath and shoved it into the small fire pit. She lit it with shaking hands and turned her back to the flame. It burned fast. Synthetic fibers always did. For a while, warmth returned. Not enough to push the cold from her blood, but enough to keep her organs from failing. Her eyes fluttered shut as she crouched near the fire, trying to imagine something, anything, that didn't ache. She dreamed of the med ship she once served on. Gleaming white walls. Clear order. Purpose. People respected her there. Not here. Not on a backwater planet where settlers refused to even open their doors to a half-frozen alien woman who had knocked on 3 homes the first night, before the frostbite began to chew at her toes. Go away. Don't bring trouble here. We don't take in your kind. Words from different mouths, same meaning. Now she no longer knocked. She burned pieces of herself, 1 layer at a time. By the 4th night, the wind had turned cruel again. Her fire was nothing but ash and embers. She curled into herself, wrapped in tattered underlayers not meant for cold. The pain in her feet was gone. That terrified her more than the pain itself. Frostbite had finished its work. The world around her faded into a silent, muffled gray. Her thoughts slowed. So this is how it ends, she thought. Not in glory, not in defiance, but quietly, like a shadow blown into the snow. She didn't notice the soft crunch of boots, didn't hear the quiet growl of an animal, but her body did. A growl, low, steady, not threatening, warning. A flash of fur moved into her vision. Eyes canine, large, intelligent, nose twitching. The creature let out a sharp bark and padded back toward the cave entrance. Then she saw a figure, tall, wrapped in brown and black. A long coat. Human. Rue, back, the human said calmly. His voice was low, rough, but not unkind. He stepped forward and knelt beside her, his gloved hand checking her pulse with practiced ease. Vel'Rana tried to speak, but only a rasp came. She expected judgment. She expected cold words. Instead, the man muttered, "Damn, you've lasted this long." He slid off his coat and wrapped it around her. "Hang on, stranger. You're not dying tonight." She wanted to object, wanted to spit at his mercy. But the warmth of that coat. She cried instead, silent, broken sobs that no longer had strength behind them. The last thing she saw was firelight in the distance. Not from her own ashes, but from a human home. The first sensation Vel'Rana felt was warmth, radiating across her skin like sunlight on thawing stone. She blinked slowly, vision blurred and dull. A ceiling. Wood, not metal. Rough beams. No engine hum. No sterile Dominion lighting. She turned her head slightly and groaned. Her body protested even that simple movement. Every muscle ached as if dragged through a blizzard and back. Then came the scent. Smoke. Boiled roots. Meat broth. A sharp pang of hunger sliced through the haze. Her stomach clenched violently. "You're awake." The voice came from the far side of the room. Deep, Calm. Male. Human. She flinched. Her limbs responded slowly as she struggled to sit up. The blanket covering her slipped, revealing thin bandages on her frostbitten arms. She had no idea how long she'd been unconscious. The man stood by a stove, stirring something in a dinner pot. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a worn look to him, like a machine repaired too many times. Gray stubble, calloused hands. His clothing was practical. Thermals, boots, and a jacket with faded military patches on the sleeve. A faded name tag read Trent. "I didn't bring you in for conversation," he said. "You looked half dead. Figured that was a problem I could fix." Vel'Rana cleared her throat, voice hoarse. "Why?" He glanced over his shoulder. "You needed help. No one else did it." Simple words. No posturing. No ulterior motive. She stared at him, studying. "You're not afraid I'm Dominion?" He shrugged. "You're cold, hungry, and burned your clothes just to stay alive. I figure war's behind you." That cut deeper than she expected. He returned to the pot, ladled thick stew into a chipped ceramic bowl, and walked it over to her. "Try not to die eating it. You make my dog sad." As if on cue, the dog, Rue, padded into view, tail wagging. A large husky mix with intelligent blue eyes. It sniffed Vel'Rana's hand before laying beside her, without hesitation. She blinked. "It's not afraid of me. She likes people who don't lie, or run, or shoot." Elias sat down in a chair by the fireplace. "You didn't do any of those." Vel'Rana ate in silence. The stew was rough but hot, spiced root vegetables, something chewy like dried boar meat, and a broth that scratched its way down her throat like it meant to wake the dead. When she finished, she leaned back and finally said, "I'm Vel'Rana, former Dominion medic. I was shot down en route to defectors on the Outer Rim. I didn't think I'd make it through the first night." Elias didn't react much, just nodded slowly. "Elias Trent, retired Earth Coalition infantry, settled here for the quiet." She raised an eyebrow. "You left the military for this planet?" He chuckled without humor. "After the wars, I had enough noise. Figured a frozen rock with no politics was the closest thing to peace." Vel'Rana absorbed that. Something about him made sense. Quiet, solid, not wasting words. Humans confused her. They were loud and emotional, yet deeply private. The contrast always made diplomatic contact tense. Elias stood and walked to a small cabinet, pulling out a medical kit. "I took a look at your feet," he said without flinching. "Frostbite. Real bad. I stopped the spread, but you'll need regeneration gel or grafts." Vel'Rana nodded. "I can handle my own care now. Thank you." He handed her the kit without protest. No dominance games. No insistence. As she examined the supplies, she found something strange. The salves were labeled in both Human Standard and Shalari script. "You've treated aliens before," she said cautiously. Elias shrugged. "Had a Shalari squad mate once. Bled the same color. Screamed louder, though." She allowed a faint smile at that. It felt foreign on her cracked lips. The fire crackled behind him. Rue dozed at her side. For the first time in weeks, months even, Vel'Rana felt safe. Not because she was behind walls. Not because she held a weapon. But because someone had chosen to be decent. "You could have ignored me like the others," she said softly. "Why didn't you?" Elias looked at her then, eyes tired but kind. "Because no one else did," he said. Didn't seem right. 3 days had passed since Vel'Rana first woke in Elias Trent home. Her wounds had scabbed over, and her body, once stiff from exposure, now moved with a kind of quiet gratitude. She still walked with a limp, especially in the mornings, but at least she walked. Elias didn't hover. He brought her food, gave her tools, and offered brief nods of approval when she managed something herself, splitting firewood with stiff hands or boiling her own water for tea. He never lectured, never boasted. Still, the silence between them wasn't emptiness. It was space. Space to breathe. Space to recover. She appreciated that more than she could say. Outside, Kestrel, 7 remained a frozen hellscape. Bitter winds swept across the ice plains, howling like angry spirits. But inside Elias's home, there was warmth, not just from the fire, but from the rhythm of routine. On the 4th morning, Elias entered the room with two mugs. One, dark with a sharp, bitter scent. The other, leafier, hers. He handed her the mug without a word and sat across from her. "You're wasting food on me," she said quietly. Not for the first time. "I'm not wasting it," he replied. "I'm sharing it." Vel'Rana studied his face. In the Dominion, no one shares unless they owe a debt or want one in return. Then your Dominion sounds lonely. She hesitated. It was ordered, predictable. We knew what to expect from each other. Elias took a sip from his mug, then looked her dead in the eye. "Did you expect to be left to die in a cave?" The question hit harder than she liked. "No," she said after a pause. "I expected a battlefield, not frostbite and doors slammed in my face." "You expected war." Got silence instead. Elias leaned back in his chair. "Sometimes that's worse." Vel'Rana didn't argue. He wasn't wrong. Later that day, she watched as Elias used flint and steel to light the hearth. He worked methodically, paper, kindling, then logs. The flames caught quickly, licking upward with greedy hunger. "I was never trained in fire-making," Vel'Rana admitted. "Our ships do all that for us." Elias glanced over. "Want to learn the old way?" She nodded. He placed flint and steel in her hands, then walked her through the steps. Her fingers fumbled at first, stiff from injury and inexperience. But with practice, she managed to strike a spark, catch it in the kindling, and coax the flame to life. The small fire she built made her feel absurdly proud. "There," Elias said with a grunt of approval. "Now you're officially frontier material." Vel'Rana gave a small laugh. Not bad for a Dominion trader. Elias didn't flinch at the word. "You defected?" She hesitated, then nodded. "I was tired of patching up bodies just to send them back into the meat grinder. I tried to transfer to humanitarian aid. They called it sedition. My own people branded me disposable." Elias was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You made the same choice I did, just in a different uniform." That surprised her. "You defected too?" "I walked away," he said simply. "From orders. From war. From men who wanted to turn survival into conquest. It didn't sit right anymore." She looked at him with new eyes. "Why settle here?" she asked. "Why not go back to Earth?" He scratched Rue behind the ears. "Earth doesn't feel like home anymore. Too loud. Too many ghosts. Out here, I build things with my hands. I decide who lives under my roof. And sometimes that's enough." Vel'Rana nodded slowly. "And you'd let an alien fugitive be one of those people?" "Already did." That night, she watched the firelight play across the wooden walls. Her body was still sore, her heart still guarded, but something inside her had shifted. The warmth wasn't just physical anymore. It was personal. It was shared. As she drifted off to sleep, Rue curled up beside her again. Elias was already dozing in the chair, arms crossed, head tilted down. In the Dominion, she thought, we would have called this a breach of protocol. But here, on this frozen edge of space, it felt a lot like home. Vel'Rana woke to the sound of engines. Not the subtle hum of a friendly vessel, but the growl of low-hovering patrol craft, cutting through the thick snowstorm outside like wolves through brush. She was on her feet instantly, blood cold despite the fire's warmth. "Elias," she whispered. "There's someone out there." He was already at the window, his jaw clenched tight. Outside, spotlights swept the icy fields, search drones buzzing low. A Dominion recon ship hovered behind them, sleek, silver, unmistakable. She cursed softly in Shalari. "They found me." Elias didn't ask how. He didn't need to. "You said you weren't being followed," he said, not accusing, just verifying. "I thought I wasn't. I disabled all my tracking implants. But they must have pinged the crash site again." Her voice was tight, controlled. "If they take me, I won't survive the flight back." Elias stepped away from the window, calm despite the tension. "Then we won't let them." Vel'Rana turned to him. "You don't understand. Helping me now? It's treason under their laws. They'll mark your homestead. You'll lose everything." Elias handed her a rough canvas satchel and began stuffing supplies inside. Food, water, a flare gun, heat packs. "I don't care." She grabbed his arm. "Elias, you don't owe me. I'm not doing it because I owe you." His voice was firm now. "I'm doing it because no one else did. Because you deserved better than a slow death in a cave." And because you're not just some fugitive, you're human enough for me. That silenced her. Not the word human, but the way he said it. Without irony, without division. Outside, a spotlight scanned over the house, lingering on the window. Vel'Rana ducked back, heart pounding. She could hear boots in the snow now. Heavy, deliberate. A team. Elias moved with quiet urgency. He grabbed a thick parka and tossed another toward her. North side trail behind the shed leads into the ridge. There's a ravine. Stay below it. I'll give them something else to chase. You'll get arrested. Maybe. Maybe not. Depends how stupid they are. She hesitated. Her instincts screamed at her to go, to flee, but another part of her, one that had grown quietly in the warmth of his fire, resisted. I'll come back, she said. I know. She didn't ask for a promise. Neither did he. Snow bit her face like needles as she slipped into the night. Rue ran ahead, pausing now and then to make sure Vel'Rana followed. The trail behind the shed led into darkness, but she kept moving, past trees heavy with ice, over frozen brush, down into the ravine Elias had described. Behind her, voices echoed, Dominion accents. Harsh, searching. Then came the explosion. Vel'Rana flinched as a flare burst overhead, red light slicing through the snow. A second later, gunfire cracked the silence. Shouting, orders, movement. Elias was drawing them away. She kept moving, breath ragged, feet burning despite the cold. By the time she reached the ridge's far side, dawn was threatening to rise behind the cloud cover. She collapsed beneath an outcropping, eyes blurred with exhaustion, fingers clenching around the satchel Elias had given her. Rue curled beside her. The dog trembled, but did not whine. Vel'Rana stared into the storm and whispered, You'd better still be alive, you stubborn bastard. 2 days passed. She stayed hidden, treating her frostbite, eating rations and slow bites. Rue went back and forth, disappearing for hours, returning with scraps of scent or small signs of Elias. Then, on the third morning, Vel'Rana heard footsteps, slow, heavy. She reached for her knife. Then she saw him. Elias emerged from the white, limping slightly, face smudged with ash, his coat singed but intact. Rue bolted to him. Vel'Rana followed, stunned. You made it, he grunted as she helped him sit. Idiots shot up my firewood shed. Thought I ran west. Left without checking. She laughed. A raw, real sound. You're insane. Probably, he said, then met her eyes. But I keep my promises. They stayed in the ravine another day before moving further north, toward a hidden shelter Elias had once built as a survival fallback. No Dominion patrols followed. Word was they'd been recalled after failing to locate the target. In time, Vel'Rana would leave Kestrel 7. She'd join a new alliance built on aid, not war. But she would return now and then, always to one small cabin, always to one firelit home. Because on the fourth night, a human had opened his door, and in doing so, changed everything.